Thank you for joining today. This is, I guess, learn something new today. This is a Substack live, and today we have Michael Motley, somebody that I admire, someone whose content I really, really enjoy. Sometime, I see his stuff every day. I
Yeah.
really admire his YouTube. His YouTube is crazy good.
Thank you so
You
much.
put a lot of time and energy into the YouTube. And before we were kind of chatting, we realized how we live close to each other.
Yeah.
Oh, you lived in Chicago. I don't know why I thought you lived in Chicago. Um, I actually, you know what? I thought you and Ernest Crim were related.
Ah,
I
yeah.
think that's why I thought you guys were cousins or something like that. Because there was a lot of similarities in your work, and I was like, oh, yeah, they must be related. So, and then I saw you guys do the live, and I was like,
No, that was just that and you know what's funny about that? I told him this, and it's the same way with you. I've been wanting to work with you guys for a while, and
yeah,
it's just you know, pride. You know how pride is. Pride's a funny thing, and
right,
it prevents you from asking people for things that you normally would do, or you think like this is a good mesh, but nah, he too busy, or he's doing that, he's doing this, he's not going to talk to me. So it just
right.
didn't.
I want to tell you, I'm not going to say exactly where we live, but um, there's a lot of content creators in our area. I'm very shocked. One day, I got a phone call from another Black History creator, and he was like, "You live in so and so," and I was like, "Actually, I live close." He's like, "Let's do lunch," and then come to find out, he lived where you live as well. And there's at least three or four, that are in this general vicinity. So it's really cool. I think we all should like get together and do something because
Yeah.
the history, I really my goal this year. I recently got into like this incubator program
Mhm.
for content creators, and my goal this year is to like travel more and do the Black history more, like start up in the mountains
Yeah.
and then go down to the low country, go to like the Gullah Geechee areas
Yeah.
down to Florida. And like, I really think that that is being outside, doing content outside is really going to be like the new wave for historic content
I
creators.
think so. I actually respect people that go like not I'm not just talking about something. I'm talking about something in the area that it happened. It's
Mhm.
so rare for me to be able to get to do that. I'm such a person. I'm usually so in the moment that I never think to tape anything. I never think or have all that vision in my in my mind too long after. And you guys are like, you should do. I should have done this. I should have done that. Oh, I see what they're doing. That's awesome. I should do that.
Right,
I
right.
love that. I love that idea. I think it's brilliant. I really do.
Yeah. Man, I first saw you when I was looking at YouTube, and I was like, you were doing all audio videos at first, but like they were like captivating, and the graphics were so good.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man, this is," I was like, and that's when I originally reached out to you. I was like, "Yo, I need somebody to help me because my YouTube game
Yeah.
sucks." I can do I can do 1 minute, 2 minute, maybe 2.5 minute videos all day. But once I get past that 2.5 mark, I'm done. I'm like, "Ugh, I can't do
It
this."
is honestly, but because that's where I started, uh, I kinda have an understanding a bit of how that works a little bit better than short form. Even though I am getting more into that short form arena, I kinda feel like I'm hitting a stride a little bit where I'm finding my voice, and this has come from having those notes, especially on Substack. So that's why I appreciate Substack. I know a lot of people hate it, but I once again, I kinda understand it, and I those notes that I put out every day, those things then become shorts.
Mhm,
I then tape those as shorts, real rudimentary, just a picture behind me, voice, couple, 30 seconds. Like even what you're doing when you talk for a minute and you freestyle and you're able to just talk, I
mhm.
don't have that in me. If there's not a script in front of me, if I'm not reading from something, it goes down here very quickly. So
Don't
I like
Yeah,
I
don't
see
tell
the
anybody.
superpower.
I use a script for all my videos, man.
But
There's a
but here's the thing, you don't
Yeah.
look like it. It looks extremely natural.
Well, what I do, and I learned this because I used to work in radio. What I do is I'll stop the video, I'll read the line, and then I'll like because I can't really remember things
Right,
really
right.
things. So I just go here, press the button, and say it, and then I'll stop the video. And so it looks like, but there's jump cuts there. But like it's, I use a script for every single one of my videos, and people say that all the time. Like, oh, how were you able to memorize all that? I was like, actually, it's right there. My phone's right
That's
here. My
awesome.
computer's right here.
I would
Yeah,
have
yeah,
never known. It looks extremely natural.
bro. And but your stuff too, man. Like, I mean, the amount of information that you give and the detail that you give for your videos on YouTube, I'm so taken away because it's like, and then of course you keep your same tone the whole time,
Yeah.
and it's like it's captivating, it's very informative, and then the graphics that go along with it and the editing style and everything. You put a ton of work, man. That's like
I it's man, it's gotten it is I really even from that, I feel like I'm finally hitting my voice, like, I finally understand and I feel natural because even, like, you when people tell me about it, they're like, "I love what you're doing, I love this, I love that," but when I'm doing it, it feels like I feel like a robot.
mhm.
In my own head. So it's just now where I feel like I finally have a grasp on it. And even for myself, like the graphics, and I was like, this could be better, that could be better. I wish I did this. I wish I'd have done this differently. I wish this looked like every single one of my earlier videos, I mean, like, and not just like years ago, like for a few months, I was like, I wish I could go back and change this or do this. I'm always thinking of how this could be better. How could it be said? How could it be more conversational? How more natural? Because my big thing is to keep it as conversational as possible. Because, I always tell people that, most adults have the reading level of a ninth grader. That's where you have to talk to them. That's where you have to, if
If
I
they're lucky, they have
yeah,
to.
then you're lucky, right. Or if you're lucky. So if I'm not giving you information in a way that you can adjust it, you're not listening to me. So it's always I'm always thinking about, like, how can I change this and how can I give things there was a point very early where I thought that I would run out of things to talk about. But I found that I can even repurpose old videos in a different way. I can sell you something the same information, but a slightly different way. Like, for example, I did one on black rice, which is like, Charleston, the Low Country, and how they developed rice and basically taught the British how to develop rice. Well, recently, I talked about it the other day. That's when I wrote the article that I dropped yesterday. And there's this whole other angle where you could talk about like how they had the sickle cell trait and it gave them an immunity
Area,
against malaria. I didn't even talk about those things. Like there's a completely different angle that you can take this. You can also make like the agency. I didn't talk about the agency part about them having because the white population were afraid of contracting malaria.
right,
They didn't show up. They left them to their own devices, and that
right,
allowed the Gullah people to develop and keep a lot of their culture, which most enslaved people didn't have that ability.
right,
Those things don't get talked about, and I can revisit that video and come at a different angle. That's another week of content that you
right,
can put out. So you never run out of things. You just approach it a different way.
right. And I feel the same way about, I recently I've been thinking, "Man, when am I gonna run out of things to talk about?" And it's endless, right?
Yeah,
Especially with the niche that I'm in where I talk about Afro Latino culture. Because
absolutely.
the one thing that I realize is, like, if you go to certain parts of Puerto Rico, it's like you're stepping into Charleston, South Carolina. It's like the only difference is the language.
Right.
You're like, "Oh, okay." Like, I see these ladies in Charleston, and they're wearing the all white,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I go to Puerto Rico, and I see the ladies wearing all white. And, usually there's some spiritualism that's going on there, whether they call it voodoo, whether they call it Santeria, but it's like it's a thing that's connecting us, right?
Right.
And so, like, when I see these, like, diaspora wars and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and then I see first of all, the diaspora wars are stupid
Yeah.
because we're all arguing in English,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They already took from us what they could take from us. They took
Yeah.
away our language, and we're arguing. I saw this thing on Threads about a year ago. Somebody said, "Oh, so and so makes the best rice," right?
Yeah.
They only let us keep what was bare minimum to sustain us. For
Right.
in the Caribbean, it's rice and bananas,
Yeah.
and then they brought over condensed milk to give us all diabetes.
Yeah.
right? So, I mean,
Uh,
and then, like, you go to the Low Country, and it's like a lot of people eat rice down there, red rice. They do rice a million different types of ways. And I'm thinking to myself, the diaspora wars, this is such a stupid thing because we're all first of all, we're all arguing in English, like I said.
yeah,
And the second thing is we're arguing about the bare minimum that they let us keep.
right.
They didn't even let us keep our religion. They didn't
One
let
of
us
the
yeah,
one of the wild things, the things that always stuck with me is, when someone mentioned that, um God, how can I put this? Well, basically, being able to speak the religion the language of your ancestors is a flex.
right,
Like, very few of us get to speak we are speaking the language of our oppressors, and it's not just English. Whether you're speaking Spanish or French, there's this thing I have this thing where I watch, content and they talk about Africa, and I can tell who you were colonized by just by the language that you speak. I be like, "Oh, yeah, you were colonized by the French.
right,
Oh, it must have been the English." Or, because they still have those scars even though they left, some of them not that long ago.
right.
But, it's a couple, decade, half a century ago, and they still speak that language. That is a absolute flex, and for you to be at war with somebody and saying that we're different or, black Americans are different from us, bro, we just got off the bus. We got off the boat at a different stop.
Right. You know, it's crazy because I recently did an ancestry DNA test,
Mhm.
and I got back, and I wasn't surprised by this at all, but I got back, they tell you, like, your ethnic makeup, right? They
Right.
tell you what you're made up of, and then they give you a separate section where it says ethnic makeup, and it said Low Country, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and I was like, "Oh," never surprised at all because when you realize that 80% of the enslaved people that were brought to America were brought to the Low Country. I mean, and it's not just the enslaved people of the United States of America, it's the enslaved people of the Americas.
Yeah.
Charleston was Charleston, Wilmington, all these places were stopping points
Yeah,
for a lot
absolutely,
of slave ships. So it
absolutely,
never like we are all connected through the diaspora, right?
absolutely.
And I went to not me, excuse me. I had a friend of mine go to Brazil and he
Mhm.
was like, "Anthony, I see people that look like me. I see people that look like you." He's like, "This thing that they're playing with us, this is a scam. This
It is
diaspora
a scam.
war stuff is a scam."
Absolute it's an absolute scam. Matter of fact, I think more enslaved people ended up in Brazil than any other place. I think it was a matter of fact, the Americas the Americas had the least. The thing that was the difference between the Americas and Brazil is that we turned this into a slave producing factory. That was our thing. We
Yeah.
were making more. They were making more of us.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a scam. It is absolute scam. It's almost like just thinking about it, like, dang, that sucks.
I'm telling you, when I say when the more I learn about enslavement, the more I learn of how sinister these
Yeah,
people were, bro. Like, I mean, I'm talking about they breathed money. Like,
yeah,
there was nothing that they did that did not involve money. When I heard, I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but when I heard Shabuzi say, immigrants built this country, I automatically had to take a step back because I was like, wait a minute, that's not true. Because if you look at the Constitution,
yeah.
the very merits of the Constitution, there was not, it was almost no single amendment to the Constitution or no single article of the Constitution made where they did not think about enslaved people. Like,
Absolutely.
you know, and it's crazy to me, how sinister this opportunity was that America was. But I wanna ask you a little bit about your process because
What's up?
there's this huge how do you feel about AI? Because there's this huge push. I saw another guy on TikTok, he had mentioned that he used ChatGPT, and people were all up in arms. They were like, "Here's this intellectual guy that's using ChatGPT," and I have used it every once in a while. It's not something I'm dependent on, but how do you feel about it?
Um, I have a bit of a love-hate with it. Like, I can see the benefit of it, a lot, but when you're in a creative platform, it's difficult for you to parse out what part of this makes me a human project, how much of this is doing this to keep my humanity, And then how much is this because AI did this? So, like that plaque that, the plaque for getting 100,000 followers, is that plaque for AI because AI did this work, or is it me?
Right.
Am I the reason why you're here?
Right.
But I can see that if you use it in the correct way, and most people don't, that it could be a really powerful tool. It does a very good job of ingesting a large amount of information and then dispensing it to you in a way that you can ingest.
Right.
I can give you an entire novel and you say these are the highlights, this is what's important.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, every single thing that has ever been printed about AI, from the people who write about AI, who people who are in charge of AI, from the CEOs of NVIDIA to, Elon Musk and all these guys, is horrible. Like they use AI. They're like, this is the greatest invention ever. But then they're like, we're going to replace our entire staff with AI or to fund AI. Like, bro, you can't sell that both ways. I can't have Sasha from Microsoft tell us that, like, if you don't invest in Copilot, then the bubble is going to burst, and then at the same time him fire 15% of his workforce because he has this $100 billion investment in AI. My guy, do not tempt me with a good time. Like, I don't like, let it burst in. If this is what it takes for you
Right.
to understand, this is not what we want. Now, from a creative process, um, I think that it can be helpful to people. I like to use it in a very limited way.
Right.
Like, what I like is Notebook LM because I can get a bunch of books on a subject, articles, books, put that together, and then, like, give me the important parts. And then when I get to that part, I can click on this and say, and read that part. It'll
Right.
say, "Hey, this is a highlight." I go in that book and highlight that. When you're putting out videos the way that I'm putting it out, I can't I can't read the entire book. If I'm talking about Malcolm X, I can't read his whole autobiography in a week and then put together concise. I need somewhere to be able to parse a ton of information. And then, yeah, it does a great job of that. It has sped up my process 100%.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, I am very adamant that I want to keep my humanity, that
Right.
I want this to be as much of Mike as possible so that when you see those notes that I put out, that I can go and say, and like, and you ask me a question, I can say, not only do I know this, but I know X, Y, and Z. I know da 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 da. Da. I can go as deep as you want to go. I can answer any questions you might have. When you have me on live, I can go in deep into this stuff because this is me. Those notes are me. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You wanna keep your humanity because I want to be what you see. When you see me
Yeah.
on social media, I wanna be that person in real
Right.
life.
Right. Right. You're not a chat bot.
Right, I'm not a chatbot. This is not fake. This is who I am. You
Right.
see me like, there's tons of people, I've seen this, who, like, the things that they put out on their Substack, and we're not gonna talk name them names,
Of course.
does not match the person that they are when they go live. I'm like, "Yo, I'm not seeing the philosophy."
Right. 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 I mean, it is what it is. But what I mean, I don't know, are you a teacher or what got you into history?
Wow. Let me tell you what's crazy. I am in IT by trade. I This is why I know so much about AI because
Yeah.
this is what I do. So I work in cloud, primarily like Microsoft 365 services, which, that starts to get into Copilot a little bit. But about 2019, I was doing a roundtable discussion with me and my homies. It was like four of us. And I decided one day that, like, I was tired of talking about 51st dates. I don't care. I don't care who pays for dinner. I don't care nothing. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm tired of it. And this was long before, like this was it was
Popular
made. It was
shows.
popular. It was popular. I had already gotten sick of it by the time
Right.
I started seeing it on social media. So I was like, I could do better. We could do better. And I met this guy. He was a white creator, and he did an episode on the Tulsa massacre. And it was really amazing. He had, like, music and sounds, and it was, like, really immersive. I was like, "This is the best thing I ever heard. Why I want everyone to hear this. I'm so excited about this."
Mhm.
And I was like, "But this should be coming from us. This is our story to tell. We should doing this. A Black creator should be creating this." And
Right.
that's not to say that he shouldn't do this story because he'll have an audience that I won't have, people who will listen to this, who won't listen to me. It's fine that you created this, but also they should hear this from someone like me who who is also a Black creator. I didn't grow up in Tulsa, but, I understand the struggle.
Right.
So, I was like, "You know what? Imma be the change that I wanna be in this world." So, I started creating,
Mhm.
and it was horrible. My videos were awful. The video was awful, the audio was awful, it was painful, but you have to get your 10,000 hours in and get to a point where you feel comfortable in your skin, and now it's a lot easier. So I don't have a deg I don't even have a degree. I didn't go to I went to ECPI, College of Technology.
Yeah, me too. I went to Greenville Technical College.
But there's no shame in that
No,
because
there's
the
not.
journey the way you get there is your own journey, and I would not be here if I didn't go through that. I do kinda wish I went to college, but, um, as far as being historian space, what I would like to do is go back now and go get my degree and add some validity to me because I already enjoy it, but it's not gonna define me. It's
Right.
not gonna define me. I'm not gonna let you and your PhDs and your masters in African American studies outread me. If
Right.
anything, I can outwork you.
One thing that I had a guy, he's a historian at,
Mhm.
John Hopkins,
Mhm.
and he basically was like, "You're doing all the work." All he was basically talking about all of us.
Right.
Like, he was talking to me. He's like, "You guys are doing all the work that I do." He's like, "There's no reason you can't call yourself a public historian."
I
Right?
agree with that.
And so
I
that's
agree with that.
that's why I started calling myself a public historian because I was like, "You know what? If this is somebody who" I'm not gonna say his name, but this is somebody who has a PhD, a doctor next to his name, who gets paid big dollars to travel around the world to talk about history. And he's telling me I could call myself a public historian. I had another lady who works at one of the colleges here, and she
Mhm.
said the same thing to me. She was like, "There's no reason for you not to be able to call yourself a public historian."
I think so. I've seen your work, and and I think your work is as valid as anybody. I don't call
Same
myself an
for you.
historian,
I say
but
that
it
to
it
all of
it
us.
it kinda scares me a little bit. I usually call myself an expert 'cause to be calling myself an historian kinda scares me, but I think that's a little bit of my, I always had this, little guy in the back of my head that's like, "You're a fraud. You're actually a fraud. You don't have the credentials. Who do you think you are getting up here?" So it kinda
You
scares
know,
me a little bit.
that's normal, right? And I have those same feelings, but I think the work that we're doing, um, it's harmless, right?
Right,
We're not harming anyone, right?
right.
And we're coming, from it on a non-biased way, from a factual way, where we are telling the stories of our people, and we're doing it in a way we're not harming anyone, and we don't have an agenda
Yeah,
to push. I see some of these creators out here and, I see people that clearly have a white nationalist agenda to push,
right,
right? Those are creators that are doing harm.
right,
Y Regardless of the credentials, we're not doing harm and we're educating people. People
right.
tell us every day, all the time. I mean, you with YouTube and all the platforms that you're on, including Substack, me on the platforms that I'm people are telling us all the time that they're learning, right?
Yeah,
And they
yes,
can go back
absolutely.
to they can go back to the subjects that we're talking about, and they can see what we're talking about, and they'll see that none of it is wrong.
Right,
So
right.
as long as we are factually sound and we are grounded in facts and truth, we're Gucci. As
I
the kids
and
say.
that's the one thing that's always been big for me.
Right.
And then one thing I really respect is, um, making sure that we're grounded in factual truth. Like, if I tell you something, you can go and research that and look that up or read a book or find that somewhere and or you can ask me and I'll show it to you. Like, you can find, "I got this from this book. This is the book that I got this excerpt from." So I don't want a lot of the people. Now I will say this. I do omit things because a lot of stuff is too much for people to ingest. Like, I talked about malaria the other day. I could not mention to people that the Gullah people were also dying and they didn't make it past 40. They had a resistance to malaria, but yellow fever was kicking ass.
Right.
But I can't give you that. If I give you a story, I can only give you one angle because I have this chance to hook you. If I then give you a sidestep, and I was like, nah, this is not what you're telling me. This is not the story that I've been told. You know, and I'm being told here. So I normally would like, I ain't gonna say, we're not gonna say that. If you ask me about it, I will tell you, but I
Right,
try to keep us on task.
right. Of course. And then, one of the things that I run into is that do people ever tell you, like, don't like, even after you do all the research and you make these long videos and things like that, do people ever DM you, or do they tell you you don't know what you're talking about?
Oh my God. Let me tell you something. One of the things that scarred me the most, and this is why I don't like even messing with, I'll the first couple of comments in YouTube I'll like and heart, but I don't get into the weeds and reading that because I had this guy tell me, I was talking about Emmett Till, and I mentioned that he was an African American. And I guess he was one of the black Israelite dudes. And he was like, "We're not African Americans. We're da 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 da." And I'm like, "You, this is for you, brother. This is you can call me whatever you want, but the story is for you. Like you can ingest this, and you getting stuck up on like how we're named. I didn't name us.
It's grasping at straws.
Yeah, it
I've
is
seen that a
so
lot. Like, I was talking about, there's a thing in Puerto Rico called Operation Bootstrap, where they needed to get 100,000, excuse me, not 100, 1,000,000 Puerto Ricans off the island to get rid of the agriculture industry and bring in like textile and the other industries.
right.
And I said that the Puerto Ricans, that the million that were forced to come here were forced, and so many people were like, "They weren't forced. They weren't forced." Da, 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 da. And I'm saying, wait a minute. If you have no other choice but to leave your home and to leave your island, that's not a choice.
Yeah.
That's there. You're essentially being forced to leave the island. And so, I got a lot of backlash for that
I
one word, forced.
I got a lot of backlash. And I told this to Ernest the other day too. I was talking about Ruby Bridges
Mhm.
and how it was her birthday or something, and I made a note about her, but then I like tacked on something where I talked about how there's no way that a 6-year-old should be the face of integration in Louisiana or anywhere. Like that's just it's not like that's not a move. That sucks. My son is 5 going on 6. He about to be 6. There's no scenario where I put him in some all white school to be subjugated to a protest and some woman they try to poison her food and we're sending like dolls with like nooses and coffins. There's no way. That is not the move. That's horrible. And like someone mentioned that I didn't know what I was talking about, and I think that because I make these little notes, these little tiny little notes, that I know everything or I understand it. And I was like, these notes, these are for you. These are not for me. I understand the entire story. Like I don't need the note. The
Right.
notes are for you to ingest. But my big thing was is like what are we arguing for? Like the civil rights movement is not above reproach. They made a ton of mistakes. And matter of fact, their mistakes make them more human. Like we need to like acknowledge that Ruby Bridges probably should not have been the person to integrate Louisiana schools. And we should acknowledge that even the New Little Rock Nine should like these are kids.
The children,
They're
right?
they're children. They should not this is not the pathway forward. And this is not even the first time. Like they had a children's crusade. When you see those water hoses being turned on people in 1963, those were kids. Those were high school kids that they turned those hoses on. And this was a choice that was made by the local leaders, Martin Luther King at the time, because they were filling the jails with adults and they wanted to pivot to people who had less to lose. And I get that. But
Right.
that's ridiculous. Like you can't put your kids. What Malcolm X say? Can't put your kids in front of the firing line. And I mean all this to say that that their mistakes makes them more human, not less. Like we should not look at the civil rights movement or anything that anyone does and say they're above reproach and they should never be questioned. No, we should always question. I should continuously be questioning your actions because that makes us better. We don't have to agree on, the middle part of the journey. We just have to agree on the end.
Right. Yeah, the end goal is what we gotta agree on.
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy to think, when you mentioned the civil rights, movement,
Mhm.
especially what we're going through now with the president that we have. You see, Donald Trump put out one of these Truth Social of Barack Obama and his Michelle, and basically had them in gorilla outfits, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I think that we are heading I think that this administration wants to get as close to slavery as possible, for black and brown people. And I don't the way the internet goes, maybe it's because maybe it's just I'm losing faith in society.
yeah,
But I don't think we're prepared for it. I don't think that I think that the civil rights era, people were unified. Not only
yeah,
were they unified, they had a plan.
right.
When I
They did
see
have a plan.
when I see I mean, I'm talking about everything was planned out. I have a interview planned with the head of the Highlander school. And when I look at Rosa Parks, when I look at all these people, they had mentors,
They
right?
did.
They had mentor. I'm looking at I looked at Septima Clark, and then I'm looking at what's this guy's name? He was the president of Morehouse. He was Martin Luther King's mentor.
Oh,
He's from
Jason
here. He's from
Jason
here. Um, anyway, these people had mentors. They had plans. They
yeah,
had I mean, I'm talking about everything was planned out. And
yeah,
then when I see like when you said when they were putting the hoses on children, another reason that they did that is because they they did it when they got to Bull Connor's town,
yeah.
because they knew that Bull Connor
Was gonna
was
act up. He was
was
gonna
gonna
act up.
up, right, and they knew that the news was gonna be there, and they
Yeah.
knew that all around the world, people were gonna see children getting hit with fire hoses and bitten by dogs. And I don't see this generation doing that. I don't see millennials doing that.
Um, One thing I will say is this economy, like capitalism in general, was always been built on free labor, cheap labor. Like in first enslavement, you know, but then even after enslavement, hey, how can I get you to work for as cheap as possible or to mimic enslavement? So there's always been this undercurrent of how can I get you in and do it? This is basically what the minimum wage is. It's like if I could pay you less, I will pay you less. This is the minimum legally that I can pay you. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I don't know if it's color specific anymore. I don't think they care about anybody. This is the big thing. This is and I haven't said this publicly, but I thought this. This is the big thing between like when he talk about make America great again, because they're talking about the 50s. They're talking about the 40s and 50s and that idyllic picket fence, Levittown house. But the big difference between that is at least at that time they cared about white folks.
Yeah.
They don't care about none
Okay.
of y'all. They
Nothing.
don't care about any of y'all. And if they can get someone in here, and they don't have to be black or brown, if it's a white person, a poor white person who has some type of debt servitude, working on a chain gang, they're completely okay with that. Like they would prefer for it to be brown, but they could be any of you guys can get it. And you can kind of see that in how ICE acts. Because
Yeah.
ICE is they shot a white guy,
And
a
a white
regular white guy.
woman.
Right. A
We talking
white
about
woman.
remember
Right.
during the campaign when JD Vance was talking about we need more babies in America, we need more,
Yeah.
we need, and then the whole thing with Project 2025 was like
Right.
we need more white babies, and then
Right.
they shot a white woman.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you go through history, you kinda see how the whole idea so many black people were lynched just to protect the virtue of the white woman. So
Yeah,
when you tell me that your whole ideology is built on the fact that you putting white women on a pedestal, and one of the first people that you shot was a white woman,
as is game over
bro,
for the
no,
rest
that's
of them.
game over. That don't jive. That's not meshing.
I
So
mean, when I saw them shoot Renee Good and when I saw them shoot Alex Preddy, I was thinking to myself, if they do that to a white woman and a white man, imagine what they would do to black people.
right. But imagine what they're doing.
Imagine
Like,
what
if they
exactly.
yeah, like, I can't even imagine. It is really, really, terrifying to think about, and then the terrifying to see how it's framed, how it's phrased, because when you sit here and tell me that you're trying to go get the most dangerous of the dangerous, you know, criminals out here, and then I see you posted up outside a church because they were here in Charlotte, and then when they were in Charlotte, ICE was sitting outside of a church. Those people were in there at worship. and they can't and they found out that ICE was waiting on them to come outside, and they ended up waiting them out, or they ushered them out the back in buses, I mean, in church vans to get to where they needed to
Right.
get to where they needed to go. You're not getting the best of the best. You're indiscriminately grabbing people off the street. Though that viral video of that 5-year-old boy, what was he guilty of? Being
Nothing.
adorable? Like, come on,
Nothing.
bro, you're killing me.
Right.
This is not
Right.
this is not
Right.
it's not jiving. What you're telling us and what you're feeding to the people, and then what we're seeing, these are 2 different things. And it's like, to talk about, like, not being prepared, whew, I don't know if we're prepared. It is so weird because we live in a world that is full of information. It's full of information. Like, you see how easy we live 100 miles away from each other. We could DM each other and talk to each other and set this up and no problem. Like, it should be extremely easy for us to coordinate and to do things and to work on things. And when you look back on the civil rights movement, they had none of those things. When they were doing the Montgomery bus boycott, they got 100,000 people to boycott the bus system, and they didn't have nothing but a phone and some. They She
Yeah.
was printing out leaflets to hand out to people. It was complete word of mouth.
Right.
And that disconnect between us, it is absolutely frightening. We have all the tools in the world that are in front of us, and we don't use we don't use
We don't use
any of it.
nearly enough. But,
No.
the crazy thing about it, I was looking at the March on Washington because I did a video about he was a little person, he was Kenny Washington.
Mhm.
And I did a video about him on Instagram. And I was thinking like the March on Washington had so many hundreds of thousands of people. And
Right?
I'm thinking to myself, man, no internet, no cell phone, no just regular, if phone, regular phone. And they had people from all over America, white, black, all over America come. Do you understand the amount of coordination that
Yo,
takes?
that is not easy.
No.
It's so not easy. And that's a shout out to Bayard Rustin because
Right.
he helped organize that and put a lot of that together. But I still don't know how that's possible. This is why I would give anything to just talk to them for a little bit, because I want to pick your brain on, like, how did you do this? How did
Right.
you do any of this? Now what I have found out, and I mentioned this a little bit, is that most of the protests were, like, spearheaded on a local level. So, like, you would see Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but he was just like, what's her name? Ella Baker. Ella Baker was inside, and they had turned Ella Baker, who was like one of the greats of the civil rights movement, and she was just a secretary. She was in there printing leaflets, but she talked about how, like, the inside of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, there was nothing there. They were just being held together with duct tape and string. It was basically just Martin would just show up here and then bring the news, and then that's what our contribution to this was. It was just, hey, look how awesome he is. But the real work was done on a local level. Those guys like, E.D. Nixon, who helped launch the Montgomery bus boycott,
Mhm.
or Shuttlesworth in Birmingham, who helped with the Birmingham campaign. Those were the guys that was really putting that work in because they lived here. This is I have to stay here. This was a this they man, they bombed Shuttlesworth House twice. Twice. He's like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
You can't
I'm not gonna
I
run.
I'm not gonna run. They had an incident. This is in Black AF history. He talked about how during the freedom during the Freedom Riders, when they first went down, they got stuck in Anderson, they firebombed the bus, they beat them if they came out. Well, then later they came to Birmingham, and Bull Connor, like, unleashed them on, like, y'all do what you gotta do. And they beat them again and put a lot of those guys in the hospital. What they don't talk about is the fact that they were waiting outside of the hospital for them. They were going to finish them off after they came outside of the hospital and beat them up again or kill them or do whatever they had to do. And Shuttlesworth showed up with like 40, 50 dudes and was like, step up and get some if you
Right.
want some. And
Right.
I'm talking like one, we don't talk about how courageous and how amazing some of these guys are, and we dim the civil rights movement down to a couple figures. It's always like Martin and Rosa Parks and Malcolm X, and there are so many guys in the shadows who did so much work. But
Right.
additionally, um, not only were they coordinated, but they was ready. I'm ready for wherever you want this. If you want this to be peaceful, it could be peaceful. But there is this threat where you can get popped, you can get shot,
Right.
or you can get beat up. And that part, that threat is what keeps the threat of violence is what keeps the things held together. Like I think Robert Robert F. Williams has this great quote where he says that nonviolence is only works when your opponent has a conscience. And
Yeah.
it's not a proper tactic for a sadist. For people who don't give a damn whether or not you bleed, you can't use nonviolence because they don't care that you turn the other cheek. They just hit you in the other cheek.
Right.
There has to be a threat. The
Right.
threat there also. So we're gonna march today, but if you want to come to the neighborhood and night ride and shoot up houses,
Well, you better be prepared to get shot back.
yeah, you better be prepared to get shot back.
You know, what's this, Deacons of Defense?
That
Um,
was another good one.
they were another good one, the Deacons of, but, you know, when I a lot of people, there's this notion
Mhm.
that, 1, that black people were better off under slavery, and then 2, that black people, excuse me, not slavery, better off under segregation. I see that a lot on social media, is that black people were better under segregation, and then 2, that black people were docile. And then when I look at the historical context of those, you know, if you live somewhere like Atlanta, right?
Right.
You had all black doctors. If you live somewhere
Yeah.
like Charlotte, you had all black doctors, all black nurses. But if you lived in a tiny town like
Yeah.
Annapolis,
Yeah.
you lived in, Toccoa, Georgia,
Right.
you had nothing.
No.
And even if you did have a doctor, the doctor was white and they wouldn't see you, or they wouldn't give you
No.
the proper medication, or they would overbill you, or they would misdiagnose you. I spoke to a lady who lived in 96 South Carolina, right?
Mhm.
This is a black woman. She was 88 years old when her husband collapsed. Her husband was, I'm thinking her husband was maybe in his 30s. He died
Right.
very young and he left her with 7 kids. He collapsed and died of a heart attack. And she called the police, and the police said something around the lines of, "Well, what do you want us to do? We're
Ouch.
not putting him in our car."
Oh,
And
wow.
then she told me another story about how she would go to get her taxes done, and, like, she would go to get her taxes done, and she was supposed to get a refund. Remember, this is a widow with 6 kids,
Right.
supposed to get a refund, and the accountant would be like, "Oh, you just broke even." He was taking her refund. He was taking a refund. And so when I hear people say things like we were better off under segregation, very few places were
Yeah.
were better off under segregation.
When they say that, they are I know what I know what they're so here's what happened. After the lift on the public accommodation, there were a lot of businesses that catered to specifically to black folks because they had a captive audience. Once you open up public accommodations, black folks had this whole world open up to them and was like, you know what? I don't have to keep going to this resort or this restaurant or this place. I have everywhere open up to me. So white businesses saw an influx of brand new customers. This is exactly why they wanted this. I saw an influx of brand new customers, but those black businesses were not reciprocated. Those white customers were not going to Black Eden. They weren't going to, these Chitlin circuit places. They weren't going to watch the Negro Leagues. It didn't happen. So those businesses closed. When they look at that, they're like, "Oh, well, we were better." We weren't. We weren't better. We were still being oppressed. Those businesses had a captive audience, and you can look at that and say that we should have catered to our businesses more. We should have insulated our businesses more. But at the time, we did not understand. We didn't understand the ramifications. And even when you look at and Michael Martin talks about this a little bit. He mentions later in his life that it cost him nothing to integrate a lunch counter. The biggest problem was it was financially viable for them to do so. If you had a franchise, you want that franchise in New York to have the same experience that you have in Louisiana. I need for you to get the same hamburger because the only color I care about is green. So it's naturally viable for them to do so. So to say that we were better, no, we were just it was a capitalist system and we were surviving within that system that we were, eating what we had available to us. But when you really dig in the weeds and you find out that not only not only is the ambulance service a brand new that is a brand new invention. I mean, like the '70s. Prior to the '70s, you call you
The funeral home would show up.
the funeral home would show up or the police would show up, and they like he said, "I'm not gonna put you in the back of my car." That's who would show up to take you to and when you think of you're in a rural town, you're in the Delta, and the police are the Klan, they're definitely not gonna put you in the car. And in addition to that, if you lived in the South, there's no hospital. There's no Negro hospital. I tell these stories all the time where black men and women created a black town and created a place for black folks to go. I was talking about Durham, the Black Wall Street in Durham, and how they created the first black hospital in that area. In that before that, they would put you in the basement if they admitted you at all. You can't tell me that this is a better scenario for us, and I can't even get healthcare. I can't go to McDonald's. And even when I do go to these white places, I'm subjected to their whim. Any or anything, the white customers get handled first. They may just give me whatever shoe size they got. I can't try on the shoes because they have to throw them away because white people don't want them after I try the shoes on. Those sorts of things.
Golly.
This is not better. You don't, when people say that, I know they haven't dug into the crates because the moment you dig into these crates, you realize it was not sweet. It
No,
was ridiculous. And one thing that I cannot subject myself to, and I will not, is I'm not going to let you whitewash white supremacy. I'm not going to make you soft
right.
wash white supremacy. Like you need to
Absolutely,
call a spade a spade. It was
absolutely.
awful and it was horrible. And if you're afraid of your ancestors or you don't like where your ancestors are portrayed, you need to be mad at them.
Them. That's right. That's right. I appreciate that, man. Man, I now listen, I can't even follow up on that. Um, but I wanna ask, like, what are you hopeful for, man? We're living in a time where there's so much
Wow.
to be concerned about, especially, you mentioned that you have a son where our kids are around the same age. I mean, we have to raise black boys
Yeah.
in this shit.
I I'm gonna tell you something. The thing that scares me the most is my son is autistic. He's 5, he's autistic, he's nonverbal, adorable, the most adorable person, full of joy. He'll bop in here right now, kick my door in, and come over and sit down on the couch playing Cocomelon or whatever.
Right,
And the thing that terrifies me the most is he is as I have to unleash him on a world that does not see him the same way, that don't love him the way I love him.
right.
And it's like that's the thing that keeps me up at night that I cannot protect him. And I'm an older father. I had him, I was almost 40. I'm like 45 now. He's 5. I can't protect you forever, but I don't know. There's no society that I can unleash you in. There has to be someone who takes care of you. And I don't know if that person exists. And this is not just a Trump question. It's not just a Trump, it's an America problem. I don't know, even in a different day with a different president, even Obama was president, there's no America that I can put my son in where
Right,
they're going to take care of him in
right.
hopes, because he doesn't understand money. How do you do this?
Yeah,
What happens when I'm 80 and he's 40? How do I do this? So that world terrifies me for my son, and all I can do is just, hold him as tight as I can and protect him as much as I can for as long as I can,
yeah.
and hope that the situation gets better. And this
Right.
is one of the things that our ancestors was always great about is hope for a better day. When you talk about like our religion and like why we, latched on to Christianity because
Right.
we took Christianity and we suited it for our own purposes and it gave us a better day. We were able to take the resurrection of Jesus and take that and parallel that to our struggle. He was able to resurrect and see a new day and better things to come. And soon we will resurrect out of enslavement. And you know, in my faith, hope that that is something that we can do. That one day there's a day where my son he can go live
Right.
and have a better space. So, like right now, it's such a awful, awful place, awful world we live in. And to get back to your original point, I don't. I don't really like pay attention to the news all that much because it's like ingesting a fire hose.
Right.
And so much of what he does and what he says, and not just him, but the administration and things that they do, I can't absorb it. This is why I don't talk about politics all that often. And I know there's a like real intersection between politics and Black history. And it's almost hard not to meld those two together because they marry together so well. But it's just like there's I want to talk about history in its totality. And all I'm getting right now is bad news. I can't
Right.
spin this in a positive way because there is no positive news. When I talk about agency and how Black people overcame or like how we, flipped it on them, there is no flip. It's just it just sucks. So it has to be more. I need to see more. I need to know maybe, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, when he's good and dead, I can talk about how how this went, how it sucked, how we overcame, but today, it's just too much. I try to live and keep my head down and keep,
My
here and now, stay real.
Right. Right. The thing that makes me hopeful is that my ancestors went through worse and they
They
survived.
did.
I'm
Mhm.
here because they survived. Like you mentioned, hope for a better day.
Yeah,
They took the religion that they had, they took the circumstances that they had, and they made it work for them. When I
absolutely.
hear the stories, my mom told me the stories about my grandmother. When she came here, she ate fish head soup. I don't even know. I didn't even know they sold the fish head. I buy fish fillet,
By the
right?
whole fish,
When
right?
she came here and she ate fish head soup, which is the worst part, and she had to deal with racism, and she
Yeah,
had to deal, and mind you, she didn't really speak good English, but
right.
when when I hear about these stories and when I hear about the struggles that my ancestors went through, and the fact that they came here and they found community. One of the things that my dad talks about is that how when he first from Puerto Rico, how he latched onto the African American community here because they saw him as a human being.
Right,
When the white police officers would call him a spick nigger, right? And they would hit him.
right.
And then, and his brothers and him would have to fight police, right? And how Black communities and how other Puerto Rican communities, we really are all we have.
Yeah,
And that is a solace that I have,
yeah.
that there are people like you, there are people like Ernest Krim, there are people like, what's his brother's name? Deontay Kyle,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are
yeah.
that are making this content, that are putting this stuff out there, that are doing the work. And, we are today, we are making the hope for tomorrow, and we are
Yeah,
using the circumstances that we have, and we are making something, a community for each other.
I
So,
think so.
th these are
And
things that make me hopeful.
I think, like, in that solace, especially with the work that you do, that we do, that people can see in that and see not only that our ancestors overcame, but how they overcame. Like, this is the pathway forward. This is how they were able to do that because they were able to come together or they were able to do this. When you talk about, like, I've been talking about the Montgomery bus boycott a lot today. So you talk about Montgomery bus boycott, it's not just that they marched, is that they were able to get together and march, but they also put together an infrastructure around that. Like, they were able to put together, like, you know, originally with taxis, then they had an Uber-like service. They even thought about buying a bus line. Like it's not just the first part. Like, hey, we need to fight through the struggle. It's like how we can fight through the struggle, and then how can we insulate our people? How can we protect them? How can we set them up? If we ask you not to go to Target, we say, "Hey, we're gonna boycott Target." Well, then not only gonna boycott Target, but that's $1 billion of black dollar. Where can we funnel that? Who wants this money?
Right.
Who wants all the money that we're not spending at Target?
Target.
Like this is, I don't. Once again, I'm telling you stuff I'll never say out loud. But
Alright, man, this is a safe space.
yeah,
This
because
Hey,
people
yeah,
people don't understand. They don't understand that like our ancestors boycotts were like just one part. There was also like, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this work? How are we going to support them in their boycott? and all the money they were not spending at Target, yo, I could probably pull up to Walmart and be like, "Hey, Walmart, you want black dollars? You wanna see black dollars? I know in this space and these tariffs and all this stuff that you would love to get that pointed in your direction. All you had to do, we don't even ask for a lot. We just ask for you to respect us. That's it. That's it. Not Black Lives Matter. Oh, we're not even asking for you to be special to us. Just say that we matter. That's
Right.
it.
100%.
That is a low bar.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. Well, Michael, man, it's a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out today,
No, man, we gotta do this again, man. I
you
love it.
too, man. This is fun.
Let me tell you something, man.
Yeah.
Before we head out, I never get to talk to people who share the love of history that I have the way you do.
Thank you.
And coming on these places and being able to shoot and have you talk, and then we can fill each other's cup full of knowledge. That's wonderful to me, man. So I fully respect what you do, and I love to do this again. This is dope.
You as well, man. I gotta sit down with you and give me a tutorial on how to get this YouTube stuff going.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk. Hit me, and we'll set up a time with just us, and we'll talk about YouTube and my thought process.
Awesome. All right, man. Hey, take care of yourself. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.